You are being called to live in peace, on purpose, with passion and prosperity. But you can't do that if you haven't unlearned the crap. The crap that is disempowering you. The crap of conditioned responses and automatic programming. And that's what we're here to do. So that you can level up because you know your soul is calling. Welcome to Unlearn the Crap and Level Up TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Welcome to Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling podcast. My name is Kathy Baldwin. I'm your host, and on today's episode of Kathy Unplugged, I'm going to share a story I think you might relate to. If you've ever felt like you were buried under responsibility, grief, or fear, this one's for you. Because this story isn't just a story about loss. It's a story about what happens when we stop playing God and we surrender and we allow. Let me set the stage for you. My parents became very successful. And they retired to Mexico at a very young age, well, young for retirement. They took my grandmother with them, and they built a house, they built a life, and created a fantastic retirement. Unfortunately, my parents passed away very suddenly, very early, and within 7 weeks of each other. What that left was my father's dying wish that I do not move my grandmother, my mother's mother, that they had taken to Mexico with them, who now was 94 years old, very set in her ways, had built a life, didn't want to leave it. The stress of losing both of my parents made me think that when my father made me promise not to move my grandmother, that meant that I was now responsible and to live the life and take on the decisions that they had chosen. And so, as the dutiful daughter that I was, in keeping my deathbed promise, I sold my house. I sold my possessions. My husband and I packed up and we moved my daughter to Mexico, where we put her in a bilingual school. We moved into my parents' home, and we allowed my grandmother's life to go on unchanged while we uprooted everything. I mentioned that my parents' passing was sudden. So we were not prepared. We weren't prepared emotionally, financially. We weren't prepared in any way to be making this huge commitment and life change. And so the type A person that I am, I got out my spreadsheets and I created plan A and B. And I mapped out how I was going to make this work. I created all of the issues that needed to be resolved. I created a plan for each and every one of them, whether it was financial, schooling, health, the wealth and well-being of my marriage. I had it all mapped out. Everything just needed to go according to plan. But like most things in life, my plan A didn't work. So I went to plan B and plan C and D. And I eventually ran out of plans. So while I had moved into my parents' home and assumed their life and taken on the responsibilities and the volunteer work and their social schedule, it was as if I had stepped into their life and just replaced them. Not healthy for my grandmother, not healthy for my marriage, not healthy for my daughter. And you can be bet sure it wasn't healthy for me. But at the time, I didn't know how the central nervous system worked. I didn't know that when you are under extreme stress or extreme grief, that you are flipped into the sympathetic central nervous system mode, which cuts off your prefrontal cortex, which means you don't have sound logic thinking. You cannot actually create a logical plan to implement and follow. But your brain is under this guise that you're okay. And you can make yourself believe that you got everything under control. And I did for a year and a half, almost 2 years. I hung on. I found ways. Every problem that came up, I resolved it. I learned a lot during this time, so it wasn't a total waste. I learned a lot about my lineage and traumas that came through ancestral training. I had a lot of time to talk to my grandmother and get to know her life, her childhood. I got to see things from a different perspective that really helped in my unlearning journey that came many years later. So it was of some value. Let me share a little story about my grandmother. My grandmother, at the time when I moved into Mexico to take care of her, she was 94 years old. She was still cooking her own meals. She was still doing her own gardening. And she was doing her own washing and cleaning and taking care of herself. She watched every hockey game. She read voraciously. She loved books. She loved the Olympics. And so she would wake up to watch the opening ceremony and knew every event and every schedule and every stat all the way up to the closing ceremony at 94 years old. Now, her body was starting to deteriorate, but she had dealt with breast cancer twice. She'd had multiple mini strokes. She had overcome so much. She was a survivor of World War II. She had escaped Estonia that was under control by first the Germans and then the Russians. She was a single mother when her husband left her while she was pregnant. She went through so many things and emigrated to Canada, became a soul supporting mother, raising my mother. But all of that she had gone through created the crap I talk about all the time. It created conditioned responses and automatic programming that everything must be perfect, that everything must be working, and we don't play. She couldn't understand my daughter at 7, 8, 9 years old playing with toys because she didn't have a childhood while she was growing up. She was out working by that time. She would go to the store, and while she was the original carnivore, she ate meat, potatoes, and fat. And once in a while, she might have a tomato that would last the entire week, and she would call that her vegetables. When we would go shopping at the store, she would pick up and touch every single tomato to find the absolute perfect tomato, because nothing but perfection was good enough. Her house was immaculate at all times. This was part of the crap that I learned later on in my life of needing to be perfect to be accepted. But that was a learned behavior from her childhood, from the traumas of war, from things that she had had to endure just to survive. So here she was at 94 years old, living in Mexico. She didn't drive. She didn't do her own banking. She couldn't go grocery shopping. She couldn't take herself anywhere. But at home, she was fully independent. And she loved her independence. So when I moved down and I was taking care of her and taking all of those roles to make sure that her life did not change, stepping into the role of a caretaker of someone 94, 95, 96, 97 was very difficult. I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for the grief of losing both of my parents. I wasn't prepared for the confusion of living in a new country that I had done no preparation to know about. Unlike my parents who chose the country, who'd done the research, who made all of these choices. It was as if someone had taken me and dropped me in to a whole new world that I didn't know existed. I had to figure things out really quick. So there came a time where I had run out of resources. I had run out of mental health. I was declining. I was spiraling. I was falling apart. And I knew that in order for me to survive, in order for my family to have a chance, that I needed to give up living in somebody else's life, of somebody else's choice, all because I made a deathbed promise. And so what I did was I went to my grandmother and I said, I'll tell you what, you come back to Canada with me. And I will create this environment here for you. I will create your own apartment within the home so you can do all this. And I'll still take you to the doctors and to shopping. And I will make sure that nothing changes except the weather. I couldn't change that. So she wouldn't have the same gardening 12 months of the year. She wouldn't be able to go outside the way she was used to doing. There would be a lot of homebound time for her. Her immediate answer was no, I'm not going. And so that left me in the position of, what do I do? I've done everything. I'll never forget the day that I left her home and walked to where my parents' home part was. And I fell to my knees and I sobbed. And I looked up at the sky, and I am not a religious person. I wasn't really raised religious. Prayer wasn't anything I was used to. But they say when you hit a place of extreme and fear, that we all turn to an unknown source. And so I looked to God and I said, okay, God, I give up. I give up. I've done everything I can think of. I give up. Do you know the minute I stopped trying to control everything, the answers appeared immediately. I was immediately invited out to dinner with somebody. They took me to a pizza restaurant in Mexico. They took me to this restaurant when they were vegans, and they didn't eat that. That didn't make sense to me, but it happened. Immediately afterward, I was given my very first chakra balancing. I didn't know what chakras were. Sure didn't know how to balance them, but I had my very first chakra balancing. After that, the phone rang, and an immediate solution for my grandmother's living conditions came into play. Immediately, all of the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. In hindsight, what fell into place was what I should have done instead of moving myself and my family, selling everything I owned, to step into somebody else's life. This was what I should have done, but I couldn't think of it during that time because I was in such extreme stress and such deep grief. I allowed the universe to open up and guide me, and everything fell into place. My grandmother lived until 102, living in the place that she had called home. While it wasn't always the same caretaker, I had enough resources and things in place that I could always make sure that all of her physical, emotional, medical needs were always taken care of, even when she declined. I had everything taken care of where I could assume that responsibility and live my own life. I didn't need to give it all up. But I thought that that's what love did. I thought that that's what a good girl did. I thought that's what a good daughter did because I had lived a life of constant self-sacrifice for everybody else's needs. This was normal to me. It is absolutely amazing what happens when you can live from a place of open, receptive faith and trust that everything is going to unfold for you and you just have to take the next steps. But we weren't taught that. We were taught the crap that we're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to be the one in charge. We're supposed to be the ones who do everything, know everything, and not ask for help. What happens when we try to control? We are allowing ourselves to put our pain, our grief, our traumas on the back seat by suppressing them. That creates more disease, more problems. But it also gives you the opportunity to avoid. Don't look. Pretend it's not there. Soldier on. Everything is okay. I'm fine. All the other things that we say. But when we stop resisting and accept the truth that it doesn't have to be all us, that there is a force greater than us, that there is opportunities that align when we take the control from us and we just open to receive. And then we can make choices by our options that are presented that our brain can't think of, things we would never have dreamed could ever happen. That breakdown that I had was one of my greatest lessons that I ever had. So my question to you, are you living somebody else's life? Somebody else's expectations? Somebody else's choices? Is somebody living vicariously through you? Are you trying to fix things that aren't yours to fix? Do you take on responsibility for other people's problems? Have you put yourself on the back burner? The only defeat that you can get out of a situation like this is to continue in this destructive pattern of trying to control everything. Because control is a hard emotion. It stresses us out. There's no room for flexibility. There's no room for magic. There's no room for creativity. There's no room for collaboration and cooperation and community when we are trying to control everything. Our hands are tight. They're closed like fists when we should be open to receive. The joy that I received was learning that I didn't have to carry the weight of the world, that I could live my own life, my own choices. That was a lesson that forever changed me because I was able to let go. If this landed for you and you liked hearing the story of surrender, of acceptance, of receiving, please comment, please share, and of course, subscribe. We're creating a revolution with Unlearn the Crap, of bringing the truth in so many different aspects and ways of our life. My mission is to help be a part of the positive paradigm shift that we're in. And your help in subscribing and sharing and commenting goes such a long way to making the world a more empowered place of peace, passion, purpose, and prosperity. I have more stories like this in the book I wrote, How I Unlearned My Crap, which is available at most major bookstores and, of course, on Amazon. I encourage you to find me at my website, kathybaldwin.me, Kathy with a K, of course. And until next time, I'm Kathy Baldwin, and this has been an episode of Kathy Unplugged for Unlearn the Crap and Level Up, because your soul is calling podcast. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Unlearning Curve. I hope you enjoyed it. If something landed for you today, make sure to follow, like, comment, and share, and check out all the other full interviews and other episodes of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast, where you'll find deeper conversations, expert guests, and real stories from people just like you who are unlearning their crap and choosing clarity. Visit me at kathybaldwin.me and get all my free resources. Check out my coaching programs as well as my books. Until next time, keep showing up, keep unlearning, and keep leveling up, because your soul is calling.